Welcome to episode 256 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourScreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing writer-director Paulina Lagudi. She's another great example of someone who did a bunch of short films and eventually parlayed that experience into doing a feature film. Her latest feature film is a film called Mail Order Monster, and we really dig into how that film came together for her and what she did with these shorts and kind of worked her way up to writing and directing feature films. So stay tuned for that interview. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking or sharing it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mention in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast, and then just look for episode number 257. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide. I'll teach you how to write a professional logline inquiry letter and how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. Really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. A quick few words about what I'm working on. On my feature film, The Pinch, the crime thriller film, which I just finished up this year, we officially launched on Amazon last week, so we're available to buy, rent, or stream for free if you do Amazon Prime. And this week we also are now released on iTunes, so if you're more of an Apple person than an Amazon person, we are now available in iTunes. And then next week we'll be releasing on Google Play. There were a number of very nice reviews on Amazon last week, so thank you to everyone who did write a review. It is very helpful on both iTunes and Amazon if you do write a review. So if you have a few minutes and a few seconds and wouldn't mind doing this, it is very much appreciated. Those reviews will help the film get recommended as people are watching other films, downloading other films. You know, if I have a lot of reviews for my film, they will try and figure out what films these people like, and they'll sort of try and match it with their algorithm. So getting a lot of reviews is very, very helpful, not just for me, but any independent filmmaker. So definitely support not just me, but anybody out there who you listen to. I mean, all the people that come on this podcast, they're sharing their time, they're coming and they're telling their stories. So any of these films that you watch, if you do enjoy them even a little bit, I would just encourage you, again, not just for me, but for all these independent filmmakers, go on Amazon, go on iTunes, wherever you watch the film, Netflix, wherever, and just take a minute to write a review because it really does help. Also, I'm selling the film directly from my website at sellingyourscreenplay.com/thepinch, and the word "the pinch" is all lowercase and all one word. If you buy it from there, you can also add in the 3-hour webinar I did on the making of The Pinch. I cover every part of the process of making this film, writing the screenplay, raising the money, pre-production, production, and post-production. I put quite a lot of time into preparing for this webinar, so I think it could be very helpful if you're thinking about making your own micro-budget film. I think this would be very, very educational. Again, I go through the entire process. I'm pretty granular on the detail I give in terms of how much money I raised and exactly where I spent that money, all the things that I ran into, the problems I ran into, how I solved those problems, and even a lot of just commentary by me on what I would do differently on my next film. So again, if you're interested in potentially making your own micro-budget film, I think that would probably be helpful to you. I'm still rewriting my horror thriller film. I'm into the third act, so it's definitely getting close. I'm really trying to polish it up, take some time, not rush through it, but ended up being a much bigger rewrite than I had originally planned. I wouldn't say it was a page 1 rewrite, but I've probably, all said and done, I'll probably have rewritten more than half of this script. So it just has taken a lot of time and just to get through it. But again, I want to give it that time because this is the project that I plan on spending the better part of the next year working on. So I think this is a smart thing for me to do, is to really try and make the script as good as possible. There were definitely things with the pinch as I got through it. There were little things here and there. Say, should have done this a little differently, should have done that a little differently. So just want to think these things through. If I'm going to be producing this on a fairly low budget, just being creative, solving some of these problems that I'm having in a way that doesn't cost a lot of money, that I can still do it for the budget that I think I'll be able to raise. Sometimes it just takes time to sort of work out those problems. So that's what I'm working on. So now let's get into the main segment. Today I'm interviewing writer-director Paulina Lagudi. Here is the interview. Welcome, Paulina, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show and talking with me today.
Thanks for having me.
So to start out, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up and how did you get interested in the entertainment business?
Yeah, I actually started out as a competitive dancer growing up. So it was a really weird transition on how I ended up getting into filmmaking and writing and whatnot. Turns out I had a really terrible foot injury, went to performing arts high school, and right before college, that kind of threw everything in a bit of a loop. I always knew I wanted to go to Chapman University, and I knew they had a really great film program and theater program. So I gave it a shot, gave it an audition, and I ended up getting in, which was super, super cool. Didn't really know a ton about writing and filmmaking at the time. Actually, what's so funny is I had applied to the screenwriting program after my first year and totally didn't get in. So I always find that really funny now. But back that up. So you applied but didn't get into the screenwriting program, but got into the filmmaking program. I got into the theater program.
Oh, okay.
So I worked with the filmmakers a lot because I ended up on set, but I had no idea, growing up as a dancer and no one in my family's in the entertainment industry, I didn't even understand how indie filmmaking even worked. I was like, you can make a film for, I don't know, $100,000 or under $1 million. It was crazy. So after college, after I graduated, I ended up meeting my now fiance on a film set, and he's a cinematographer, and pretty much he was the first person to tell me, like, oh, you have ideas, we can make them. And I was like, oh, okay. Really started to delve into writing then, watched everything I could, really got an understanding of what films and stories I gravitated towards, what my style was, and I'm still figuring that out today. But from there, I just started creating films. I started creating works. So my very first short film was a little comedy. I co-wrote it with a friend. But after that, the one that I feel like I really started to hone into who I am as a filmmaker is a short film called This Is How. And the original script was 13 pages. And the shooting script was a page and a half. And it's a 12-minute short. Huh. So that kind of was like a really great lesson in screenwriting for me, in the sense that, like, I, especially, living with a cinematographer, when you start out, you tend to overwrite, and you tend to write in all the shots and write in what the audience sees instead of just really writing the story. And then also, coming from a theater background, I used to write all the, the internal dialogue and everything that these characters were feeling, instead of leaving that to the audience to experience on their own.
Let's talk about the shorts just for a second. How did you raise money for them? Were they self-funded? And then ultimately, what did you do to promote them? Did you enter them into film festivals? What was sort of that path with those?
Yeah, so I did Kickstarter for 2, and then I self-funded This Is How.
Okay. And
film festivals were big. This Is How got into Holly Shorts, which was awesome because that's such a great festival for short films. And then my film after that, Holly's Girl, still in festivals, even though we shot it in 2016. We're going to be in a festival on Saturday, the Real Recovery Film Festival, and that one is about eating disorders. And that one's another one where it's a 4-page script, but ends up being around like 9 minutes long as well. So I kind of threw the whole, a page a minute thing on its head a bit. But yeah, for that, it was, the shorts are great because you really get to experiment. You don't have to follow as much of a structure as you do with features. And it's a really great, it was a good lesson for me as a writer, but also as a director, to create a lot of limitations on myself. So, writing the script, but then as the director for these shorts, being like, okay, I'm going to try and limit, the whole short into being told in like 8 shots, or 6 shots or something like that. So I really got to play with storytelling with composition and camera movement instead of really spoon feeding audiences. I try to do that as little as possible because I hate it as a viewer. So I really try to, my first drafts always suck. There's a lot of spoon feeding going on. But my goal with the script is to try and strip as much away as possible. And I worked on that a lot with the shorts, which helped me a lot with the feature.
Have you been writing other features as you're writing, directing, and producing these shorts? Have you also written some feature films? And have you tried to like sell those scripts or get financing for those outside of sort of the independent route?
Yeah, not personally. I mean, I really didn't start to get into writing. I dabbled a bit with writing the feature for This Is How, but it was more of a writing exercise. I didn't try writing and then selling those scripts. I mean, I honestly didn't even consider myself a writer until I wrote Mail Order Monster. And what's funny now is after that movie, I've now been hired to write a feature script.
Nice.
So now I'm like strictly a writer on another project, which is kind of funny. But what's interesting is because I didn't really consider myself a writer, when I started writing Mail Order Monster, or after I purchased the title and the original script of Mail Order Monster for Mark Prey and knew that I wanted to develop it into something that I could relate to a bit more, I took it to a few different writers. And it was just, in a low budget movie, I was just like, man, I can't pay these people. And then still, it was just economically, it didn't make a lot of sense. So I said, okay, I'm going to take a stab at this. And then I took it to a writer friend or someone who would, possibly be interested in writing it. And they pretty much told me I should give up writing. They were like, this is the worst thing. Just leave it to a professional. And I was like, well, now that you said that, I'm going to write this script. I'm actually going to do a really good job now. And so I wrote 8 drafts of the script in 6 months.
Okay. So let's dig into Mail Order Monster a bit. Maybe to start out, you can just give us a quick pitch or logline. What is that film all about?
Oh, yeah. I like to look up the logline real quick because I feel like the IMDb one does so much better than how I say it. So the logline for Mail Order Monster is: a girl seeks help and guidance from a robot monster to cope with the bullies at school and her father's new marriage.
Okay, perfect. And so how did you get involved with this script? You mentioned you optioned it from Mark Prey. I assume he must have written the first draft. So how did you find that script and what did that look like, your relationship with him?
Yeah, so actually it's really interesting. I was hired to line produce a movie called Mail Order Monster under a different director-producer, and the budget was really, really low. The script was the original Mark Prey script. I think it had actually gone through a couple drafts at that point. The movie lost funding even after, I'd done all this work for it as a line producer. And then, a month before we're supposed to go out and shoot, the director producer lost all the funding. I knew the option that he had on the script was running out, and I loved the title. I'd really been interested and had some, people that were interested in being in a feature with me. And I said, okay, the title, based on what my distributor friends are telling me, is really good. I know family films right now are kind of they're a great way for indie filmmakers to take, a leap into the market for a genre film. I never thought I would do a family film. So I bought the script. I didn't even option it. I bought it flat out, bought all the rights to it because I knew I was going to rewrite it. So I bought it flat out, and the original script is about a young boy whose parents separate and they get back together. Who has a bully. But it was a story that was more about a boy overcoming the bullies, and it was more focused on that and, dealing with his parents separating, but they get back together. And I thought it was super sweet and everything like that. And the monster just comes to life as soon as it comes out of the box. So there was no coming to life moment in the script. And as much as I enjoyed it, I was like, it's not a story that I relate to. And I feel like today there's so many blended families, and I come from a blended family. I want to tell a story that is a nice ode to the 90s family films that we love, but at the same time we're putting it in a world of the modern family. And so I wrote 8 drafts, and the first draft is so different, but every time I got to the draft that we ended up shooting, it just became more and more personal. And a big, the one thing I say helped me so much on my script, obviously got a lot of people to read it, got a lot of notes, but I got an editor to read it. And that was game changing. And so now I always tell everyone, if you have a script, yes, get other writers, get producers, get directors to read it, but get an editor to read your script. They're a storyteller. They are the ones trimming the fat in post, you know? And I knew as an indie filmmaker, I'm not going to have the money to do reshoots and pickups. It's a lot cheaper for me to do a rewrite than to go back and reshoot because just a scene isn't working. So that was number one for me. I always have editors read my scripts now, along with, you know, other people, but they're just a really key position that I think not a lot of people, screenwriters specifically, don't always utilize.
Yeah. I'm curious on something you just said. You, as you were line producing this original version or getting ready to, you mentioned something about distributors. Distributors seem to like the title and like the idea. How did you get those relationships with the distributors? And maybe you can describe that just a little bit.
I mean, as soon as I got into just knowing I wanted to make my own stuff, I've been very active in just, you know, meeting people online. Film Specific, which is Stacey Park's website, has a whole distributors, you know, in the entire industry that is interested in making films and also TV series. She has a forum there. I went to AFM by myself and met people. And so I just did as much as I could on my own just to start building relationships and start having an understanding of the market. You know, the worst thing is that someone makes a film with an idea of the market, but not really doing their research. And they get, you know, they're hit with a lot of hard facts after they've already invested and made a movie, and things that they could have probably, you know, done a little differently, or mistakes that they could have, you know, gotten around if they had just done their research a little bit more ahead of time. So I, based on just a couple people, it wasn't anything crazy, just a couple different distributors that I'd spoken to that I had met through friends of friends, and just wanted to, you know, I get to know them and really just talk to them, not from a pitch perspective on anything. I just wanted to talk to them from like, hey, explain to me what your job is like and what it's like to be a distributor and your frustrations. And if you could tell filmmakers who haven't made a film yet anything, like, what would that be? And then I talked, you know, had mentioned to them, you know, there's this film, Mail Order Monster. They're like, oh, it's a great title. It's a great title. And this is one thing they kept saying. I was like, oh, interesting. So that's how I ended up getting more involved in that title, even after.
And so, so do tell, like you said, you asked them, like, what are some of your frustrations? What was their answer to that?
A big thing is the very thing I said, which is so many filmmakers doing, you know, getting hit with these hard facts about the industry after they've already made a film. Like, they make their film and then they go to the market and they try and sell it. And they're like, no, everything now, even more so when I was starting my research to get this movie going, so much has to be done ahead of time. Building your audience, do that ahead of time. Really get to know who you're talking to and start that dialogue with your audience before you've even spent a dime on your movie. Really, the more that you can show proof of audience and the more that you can show proof of market and you start marketing your movie and building that up, the better. Also, story is everything. I know we always say this. People are like, oh, that's been forever. Really, it's everything, because now people get these name actors, you know, in their movie. And if that name actor doesn't want to do a tweet or doesn't want to do an Instagram, you know, post about it, it's like they were never in it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And
most films are going to VOD anyway. You know. So
you mentioned building an audience early. Maybe you can describe that. What are sort of some tactical tips to actually build an audience before you make your movie?
I think like for a first-time filmmaker, if you're looking to make a film, most of the time people go towards the drama, right? If you're going to do that, there's a completely different strategy to your film than doing a genre film. I highly recommend starting with a genre film and being very specific about that genre. So for mine, it's not just family films, it's blended family films. So reaching out to step parents, reaching out to stepchildren, anti-bullying campaigns, really understanding who those people are. And I had a whole Google spreadsheet of all these different outlets of people to reach out to during the process. And even for me on my movie, I think I could have started things way, way earlier, but you know, hindsight's 2020. Now I would do differently. So if you're making a genre film, like say for instance a sci-fi film, right? What exactly is a sci-fi story? You know, is it based on like a video game? Is it based on some sort of IP that you can start getting that through social media specifically, can you start building a conversation, right? So much of the old way of thinking with films is, oh, don't release any information about your film until after it's made. That's gone. Get that, unless it's like an Oscar movie, to be honest, but even then that's kind of going away. For indie films, like, start building up that brand, because you are building a brand, you're selling a product. Start building that as soon as possible.
Did you do a Kickstarter? Did you do a Kickstarter for this film?
No, this is all privately funded.
I see. So then what did you do to reach out? That totally makes sense. So you would find an organization that's anti-bullying organization. And then as you're starting to produce this film, you reach out to them, and what do you say? Just, hey, I'm a filmmaker, I'm doing an anti-bullying film. Would you guys like to sponsor? Would you like to be involved? Like, what does that actually look like?
Honestly, yeah, it's usually just like, would you like to be involved, when the film comes out? Would you like to do some cross promotion? That happened a lot for me with blended family podcasts or blogs. I got into Step Parent Magazine just by myself from reaching out, and they were all about it. A lot of the times too, for your niche film, like, these outlets need content. So if you're directly talking to their audience, you've done their job for them. You're like, hey, here's my movie, here's the story, post it. And they're like, yay, thank you. And even if you're doing it ahead of time and you don't have anything to send them yet, you at least are getting on their radar. Who should I stay in contact with? How can I, what kind of content would you like me to send you when the movie's done? How would you like to get involved? It's just creating that conversation. Or you don't even have to reach out to them yet, but at least start building that list of people. So when the time does come, like when you have your trailer or your teaser and the movie's not totally done yet, or you're towards that end of post, you can start reaching out. So that way that marketing process is like rocking and rolling.
Yeah. How did you even learn to even do what you just described? Like, do you have a background in PR?
Not at
Did you
all.
ask, did some of these distributors suggest this, start building this, making this list? Like, how did you even get the idea to do that?
Honestly, I come from a business background, in the sense that, like, my dad owns a business, and like, I've always just been very interested in business. I watch a lot of, being a person that is very much involved in social media and Instagram, like, I see businesses start up on Instagram or Facebook, and you see how they thrive, and it's like, what are they doing? Why do they have more followers and this one doesn't? So I have an understanding just from being curious, right? And then from asking, distributors those questions. What's funny is distributors now are really having a hard time, because they're having to do the exact same thing you as the filmmaker are doing. They're going to have to find that audience. So they're hiring the PR company and they're getting the press, but like, they're really relying on you as the filmmaker to find the audience. That's why people say, it's the old way of thinking of, oh, throw a named star in there and they'll give you their audience. Yes and no, because unless they're fully, gung-ho and they've got all the time in the world and they're not working anymore to like invest and always post about your movie, like, they'll do a post and a tweet, but it's that constant, like, that's lasts 5 seconds and people scroll, So it's really up to you as the filmmaker to reach out to the people that are going to write the reviews, because that's number one. They're going to give you those stars, and they're going to be the ones that, say, wow, I really connected to this film. I then, sent it to my friend and sent it to my family. Like, the great thing about films is they're not cars, right? Like, they really do appreciate over time. If you're like, I'm lucky, I've got a 12-year-old girl who's a phenomenal actress, she'll grow and be something great. I know it. I'm young to my career. Maybe I'll go off and do things, and this film will mean something more in 5 years or whatever. But films stay around. They constantly, as long as you just keep that going and the audience is there and you keep that conversation going, like, it will have a life. I think what happens is so many filmmakers kill their film before they really even gave it a chance to thrive. Whether it's they keep it in post-production too long, they don't specifically define their audience ahead of time, which is why you get a lot of, again, they end up in post so long because they're trying to find their audience in the post-production once they get a distributor, or once the release happens, they just stop marketing, like, oh, it's out there now. I've done it. And it's like, no, it's a film, it's out there, like, keep it going. There's no reason why. And also too, I think that's why it's important to make films that you truly care about and subjects that you really care about, because I think that's going to keep, it's really time consuming, and it can be kind of, disheartening sometimes and exhausting, but that's going to be that thing that keeps you going, is when you get those texts or you get those messages from people that have watched it and they just say how much it's meant to them, and you're like, wow, this is really cool.
Yeah.
I guess I'll keep going.
So let's talk about Mark and that relationship you have with him buying the script. When you went into this, did he know that you were going to substantially rewrite it? Did you have those conversations and he was okay with it? Did he like the finished film? I'm just always curious to see how, the writers perceive their own material when it gets done.
Yeah, I mean, we had a conversation in that he knew, got like a weird shadow on my face. I'm so sorry, from the Suns movie. He's a great professional writer in the sense that he understands like when his script is bought, and the rights are bought. He's like, I've watched movies where I'm the writer on it and it's not my script at all, and that's just the essence of filmmaking. You know what I mean? Like, that's the nature of what it is. If you're a writer that is so adamant about word for word your script needs to be on screen, write a book or direct it yourself. When you have another director that comes in, they're going to put, they're the storyteller. When you have an editor that comes in, and the director really believes their vision, like, everyone's going to their piece into the story, and it's going to develop into something outside of yourself. That's always what I like to say. Like, sure, Mark wrote a script. Sure, I wrote a script, but the movie's turned into something that is really beyond that. People have gotten things out of it that I didn't even initially intend. So Mark was a great sport. He knew. I was like, I'm pretty much going to change a lot, make it more about my story. I said, I'm definitely keeping the title. I'm keeping the names of the characters, which I did. The parents, I changed the names. But I think I kept a couple of the names of the parents, but the main characters, I kept the names. Now, the thing that's different is the monster in his script was given a completely different name, where I wanted to make it just a little bit more, because again, it's a family movie. You have to make it a little bit more on the nose, but also really show, the symbolism of the movie of mail order monster and it being mom and the monster and the spirit of the mom and the whole shebang. Yeah. So yeah, but Mark's great. He's awesome. He's always right. I think he's just been hired recently to write. Well, his script's actually been optioned by someone else, and he's doing some rewrites on another feature. Okay. And he really understands the family market and writing scripts for the family genre for sure.
Okay, perfect. And one of the things, like whenever someone is preparing for a low budget feature film, one of like the tenets is don't have kids in your movie. I'm curious if that was ever something that came up, and was it difficult working with kids on a low budget project, and how did that all work out?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I just got lucky or maybe I did the right thing. I got the best kids. One thing I will say really helped me, and I was told by a lot of the parents that no one does this, is that during the callbacks I interviewed the parents, because I knew it's my first time directing a feature. It's my first time working with kids. I want to know who the parents are, because I'm going to be I shot this in Kentucky, so I'm going to be far away from anywhere. So I want to make sure whoever's on set with me, like, they've got my back, and they're going to trust me. And I got the best parents in the world. And I knew it. Sometimes you interview these people, and I interviewed some parents, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to want you on set with me. So as much as I'm lucky, because I got the most talented actress, I got the perfect actress for the role, but I also got the best family with her. So that was a big thing. Working with the kids was great because they always hit their marks. They were very, very professional, and they were just I think because we moved so quickly. I mean, SAG rules, we're shooting like 13 scenes in 8 hours, if not less hours every day. That constant like being in the moment and moving, I think, allowed emotions to come up so much easier than having to rehearse and getting stuck in a rehearsal of how they were saying the lines. So it allowed things to just really be on the surface. And also just kids are like that. A lot of it too came down to when you're moving so fast, you're just like, this is what you're doing. Da, da, da. And so that strong, just like direction, I guess, because I had no time not to, I think just really allowed everyone to get on board, especially the kids, and be like, okay, they just understand how to take direction in that way. So yeah.
So let's talk about you've got your script, you've rewritten it, and now the next step is going out and raising the money. Let's just talk briefly. Maybe you can give some tips to people that are sort of in that position where now they've got a script, they want to write it, or they want to direct it, they want to produce it. How did you go about raising the money? And maybe you can kind of tell people things that worked, things that didn't work, and what you would suggest.
Yeah. So in my case in particular, I made sure that I wasn't going to buy this script and I wasn't going to go on this venture if I didn't know that I already had people that were interested in investing in something already. So that was a big thing for me. So I kind of, again, like reverse engineer the process ahead of time. Like if I didn't have anyone or people that, from my background, from people I've known in my life that knew, I was into films and they wanted to invest in something because, business people, everyone wants to make a movie. Mm-hmm. If I didn't have that, I would have never bought the script and I would have never been here with Mail Order Monster. So I always suggest really have an understanding of your relationships and your contacts ahead of time before you go down this venture. 2, I utilize tax incentives a lot. That's why we shot in Kentucky. And I was very adamant about creating a solid business plan that was attractive to investors regardless if the film made money. So that was good. And by doing that, I made my investors active investors instead of passive. So the way you do that is you make them members of the LLC. So many filmmakers, they have the producers as they own the LLC, they own the movie, and the investors are passive. So they really don't get to write off the investment as a business investment. They write it off as an investment loss. So if they write it off as a business loss the first year when you're shooting, because no one makes money the first year of shooting, they actually are federally able to have a tax benefit as well as the state tax benefit of Kentucky. So that's a big thing. Second, I was very adamant about getting the movie done quickly and out because the worst thing for investors is they invest in something and then 4 years later, 3 years later, 2 years later, they finally get to see the finished script or the finished film. With us, it was, we shot it in July, we finished it in December, we sold it to our sales agent in January, premiered at the market in February, sold territories, premiere in Portland in October, distributed in the US in November, and that's less than a year from it being done. So for them, it's like this, and they got the tax incentive back from Kentucky in February. So it's kind of like this nice fluid rolling out of the film. So they get to feel like something's actually happening. Mm-hmm. I'm very transparent about everything. But the more you can create that feeling that you didn't just take the money and run, regardless of the success of the film, people are just going to want to invest in you because they know that you are honest and you're on it. That's a big thing because they know it's all about trust. Mm-hmm. People understand, business people know, investing in a movie, investing in real estate, investing in a restaurant, it's all risky. They understand that. It's not up to you to prove them wrong about that or to make them think that, I know I said you're going to make a bunch of money, but, they understand. It's more or less they're investing in you and what are you going to do with this investment? How are you handling it? Mm-hmm. I've seen too many indie filmmakers completely drop the ball with that and they can't go back to those people, which sucks. Mm-hmm. This is a career. It's a marathon. I don't want this one movie to be it, So that's one thing that I would really say is do really try and reverse engineer the process as much as possible and think about what would it be like for you as an investor and make that experience as positive and fun as possible. These people invested in a movie. Mm-hmm. Make it fun, So, yeah.
So let's talk about festivals for a minute. You mentioned right now you're up with Mail Order Monster at the Portland Film Festival. Maybe you could just talk about, the submission process to festivals. And I'm curious, too, with all your experience doing short films, did you get to know a lot of the program directors and stuff, which then maybe helps you get, your films into the festivals? But maybe just talk about that, because I know that rejection is part of this process. And I always like to just kind of give people a sense of the scope. I mean, how many festivals did you submit to? How many did you get accepted to? Just sharing that, I think, will be helpful to other people, knowing that, okay, because we're all going to get, no matter how good your film is, you're not going to get into every festival.
Oh, and what's so great about that is, the thing is, a lot of the time, when I started out with my shorts and submitting to festivals, I took every rejection, very hard, because I'm like, it's such a good movie. What are they doing? I've been to these festivals. I've seen what they do. It's not about your film. It's about the program for that year. And that's the thing is oftentimes the programmers, I also I help judge the Sherman Oaks Film Festival as well. So I get to see a lot of the submissions come in and I understand the programming for that year. Oftentimes the programmers in the festival, they want to curate a specific set of topics every year. So no matter how great your film is, if it doesn't fit their program, it doesn't fit their program, So just, do your research. One thing I definitely did not do with my shorts, which I wish I had done, is I didn't do enough research on my festivals beforehand. Which festivals are really going to be great for your film from a networking perspective, and to help you really get the life out of that short film, because a lot of short films are about a very specific topic, and there are often a lot of festivals out there that want to curate films with that topic. So definitely do that. Do not take any sort of rejection personally. If you take it personally, this whole entire business is going to be a big issue for you. So just keep rolling through it. With Mail Order Monster, we never really even intended to do festivals. But the reason we did do a couple, we submitted to a couple, is we made sure that they screened either right before the release or just during the release. So often the times indie filmmakers make this mistake where they get into a festival with their feature film and they don't have distribution yet. And it's not a Sundance, and it's not a South by, and it's not a Tier 1 festival. If you're going to do a Tier 2 and under festival with your feature, have distribution. Use that festival for marketing for your release. Because after that Tier 2, Tier 3 festival press comes out, everyone forgets about your movie, and all of that audience that you built is gone. Unless you've found a way to really actively get them and been able to keep that conversation going. So it's often really hard. So what's great here is people can come to the festival in Portland. We say, hey, come to the screening. If you can't see it, it's coming out November 6th. Here we are on Instagram. This is where you can find us. So that's something I really encourage people to do. People often have this misunderstanding where, oh, you can't have a distributor before you go into a festival. It's very, very wrong. You can't be released before you go into a festival. Tier 2, Tier 3 festivals, they want good stuff. So if your feature or your short fits their program, it doesn't matter if it's already screened before. And you can ask them and they'll tell you. I hope that answers your question.
It does.
Oh,
and one follow-up question I would have is, and I just went through this process, my film behind me is The Pinch, and I submitted to a number of festivals. I found it very difficult to be able to tell if the festival was good or not, or even worth my time or not. Like you just said, is it good for networking and this kind of things? How do you actually tell? Like going on Film Freeway, they have a bunch of feedback, but nobody ever gives negative feedback. I just found very rare that I found any negative feedback on any festivals.
And oftentimes too, because they'll go on those reviews and they'll find a way to kind of get rid of it. A really interesting way to go about it might take a little bit more work, is find the films that have screened in the past and reach out to a couple of those filmmakers. Some of them may not have attended, but for the ones that have attended, they'll really be able to give you an understanding, and have it be films that you really respect too, because if it's a little film where it's like maybe it's their first film, any festival is going to be a big joy. But if it's a film with a filmmaker that does festivals, they do work, there's someone that you respect and they're like, listen, this is a great festival, definitely attend. I was able to get, all of this information. Definitely, that's a great resource. You can say this is a great festival. Don't be afraid also, there's so many filmmaker groups on Facebook. Don't be afraid to just blatantly blast out, hey guys, I want to submit to this festival. Anyone got any feedback? Especially if it's one that's a little bit more well-known. There is something I don't know if are you Los Angeles based?
Yeah, correct, yeah.
Yes. So the Hollywood Shorts film, it's like a film festival, but they do a rollout of screenings, and they also have this, I guess, program where they'll watch your film and they'll curate the festivals. They'll curate a whole program of festivals that would be so great for your short, ones that will really elevate your career, all of the different press that they can do for it. It costs a fee, but they essentially become like this team that programs an entire strategy for your film, so you don't end up getting into festivals or submitting to festivals where you throw money away. They'll even help you give feedback on like, hey, this is how you need to change the edit, because if you just change this one little tweak, you'll get into all these festivals, and it's this one thing right now that's holding you back. So it's really worth it. It's a little bit of an investment. I think it's like a couple $100s for a consultation, but it lasts like 4 hours, and she'll give you the rundown. What's her name again? Oh my God, it's Kimberly Brown. I think she's a programmer for Tribeca. She's been on there, I think she's even done programming for Sundance for a long time. She was one of the original programmers for LA Film Festival. So she created Hollywood Shorts because she was frustrated that so many filmmakers were just wasting money on film submissions and just kind of throwing money away, especially with short films. So that's definitely something that I would recommend that's very specific. But if you want something that's a little bit more cost effective and you can just do it on your own, feel free to reach out to find those filmmakers on IMDb Pro, or Facebook. So many people would be happy to give that information. Yeah. I did that for sales agents. I would reach out to the filmmakers that have worked with certain sales agents, and I call them, email them, and we'd have conversations, and they say, listen, this person robbed me, or this person's amazing.
Yeah, good advice. So how can people see Mail Order Monster? You know what the release schedule is going to be like? I think you mentioned it a second ago, but we'll just wrap it up now.
Yes, so November 6th, it comes out on, I believe, iTunes, Amazon, Google Play, Microsoft, Vudu, all those great streaming platforms. It comes out somewhere else, which is pretty cool and recognizable in 2019. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that yet because my distributors haven't really announced it. I think they're wanting to do that. But November 6th is the date. I always say go vote and then, feel good and watch the movie.
Perfect. And what's the best way for people to keep up with what you're doing? Twitter, Facebook, blog, anything you're comfortable sharing. You can just tell us that now and I'll round that up for the show notes.
Yeah, I'm a big Instagram and Facebook proponent. Okay. So at Paulina Lagudi for me personally. And then you can also find me through the movie at Mail Order Monster. That's both for Facebook and Instagram, or mailordermonstermovie.com. I'll answer you there.
Okay, perfect. Well, Paulina, I really appreciate you coming on and talking with me today. Good luck with this film and all your future films.
Thank you so much, Ashley.
Thank you. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye. I just want to talk quickly about SYS Select. It's a service for screenwriters to help them sell their screenplays and get writing assignments. The first part of the service is the SYS Select Screenplay Database. Screenwriters upload their screenplays along with a logline, synopsis, and other pertinent information like budget and genre, and then producers search for and hopefully find screenplays that they want to produce. Dozens of producers are in the system looking for screenplays right now. I launched this service at the beginning of this year, and we've already started to see some success stories. You can check out SYS podcast episode 222 with Steve Deering. He was the first official success story to come out of the SYS Select database. You can learn more about all of this by going to sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. When you join SYS Select, you get access to the screenplay database that I just mentioned, along with all the other services that we're providing to SYS Select members. Those services include the monthly newsletter that goes out to our list of 400 producers who are actively seeking writers and screenplays. Each SYS Select member can pitch one screenplay in this monthly newsletter. We also have partnered with one of the premier paid screenwriting leads sites, so I can syndicate their leads to SYS Select members. There are lots of great paid leads coming in each week from our partner. Recently, we've been getting 5 to 10 high-quality paid leads per week. These leads run the gamut. There's producers looking for a specific type of spec script to producers looking to hire a screenwriter to write up one of their ideas or properties. They're looking for shorts, they're looking for features, TV and web series pilots, all types of different projects. If you sign up for SYS Select, you'll get these leads emailed directly to you several times per week. Also, you can get access to the SYS Select forum where we will help you with your logline and query letter and answer any screenwriting related questions that you might have. Also in the forum are all the recorded screenwriting classes that I've done over the years, so you'll have access to all of those as well. The classes cover every part of the writing process, from concept to outlining to the first act, second act, third act, as well as other topics like writing short films and pitching your projects in person. Once again, if this sounds like something you would like to learn more about, please go to sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. Again, that's sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. So next week is when I publish the episode is the week of Christmas. I'm not sure if I'm going to publish an episode then. I just got to kind of see what my schedule works out for. I'd like to, and I'm thinking maybe I'll do something kind of a little different than I do on the normal episodes, just something to keep the continuity of episodes flowing, but maybe not an interview. But I haven't quite decided on that. So might be an episode on Christmas, but definitely the week after, which is the week of New Year's. I think December 31st is that Monday, which will be the last episode of the year. So keep an eye out for that episode. I'll try and do kind of a recap of kind of what I did for this year, and we will also have another interview, although I'm not entirely sure who that interview will be at this point. But Anyways, that's the show for today. Thank you for listening.